Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This week's show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Take Two. So in this episode, it seems like Eddie and Sam kind of were on one case that led them into another case. Basically, they were following this dude named Brad because basically his ex-wife Cindy hired them to, get proof of him having an affair, which is funny considering the fact that she's having an affair, but maybe it's that situation like he's already having an affair, so I don't already have an affair. I just don't have proof of it having an affair. And it turns out Brad really didn't care either because it's like, yeah, do whatever you want to. He already knew about it, but nevertheless. They come upon they hear and see gunfire. They go in there, they find Brad on top of his lover Daria's body, and it's like, oh, he's saying he didn't do it. Eddie, being who he is, kind of being the pessimist, kind of just seeing the worst in people. It's like, oh, obviously he did it. But Sam, obviously being an actor, being able to no, everything, as someone who knows when people are lying and having to pretend, it's like all his grief was genuine, his tears were real. Turns out she was actually right to have her doubts about the situation, because it turns out Daria isn't in fact Daria. Her real name's Tina. It turns out she was actually supposed to have died 8 years ago in a fire. So it's like, yo, what's up with that? Digging a little deeper into some situations, we end up finding out that actually all this is about her being a blackmailer. Basically, she get in these compromising positions with these rich guys, kind of have an affair with them, and those guys would be, said compromising position, and basically it's like, oh, you pay me or I give these to your wives and stuff like that. So, but it's like, oh, are they the ones guilty? Nope, because apparently before she died, she apologized to everyone, because, it's kind of a sweet thing. It's because she ended up falling for Brad, because it's like, yeah, why Brad, not like anyone else? She could have taken advantage of that situation because Brad was it, but it's like, why go after Brad? It turns out she has a lot of money anyway, but it turns out going after Brad wasn't her choice. She was actually being blackmailed, which the blackmailer getting blackmailed, kind of Inception-y because someone was threatening to expose all the blackmail she committed if she didn't do her thing with Brad. And she did, because it turns out, obviously Brad does a lot of movies and stuff like that. Well, it turns out he was trying to get the movie rights to this woman named Carlina, who's basically the ex-girlfriend of a dude named Salazar, who's a cartel dude. He's in prison, and she was in witness protection, but he was one of the few people that knew where she was. So that was what this was all about. The cartel people that Salazar had hired were after her, and the best way to do that was to use Daria, or rather Tina, to get close to Brad to find out that's what it all is. And that's why she ended up dying, is because she didn't want to be a part of this anymore. Because ultimately she actually wanted to warn Carlina, but she ended up dying before she could, because she wanted her and Brad to run away to Cancun, not just to get away, but so that they could actually meet up with Carlina and warn her about what was coming for. Because it's something that Sam said, and I thought was kind of pretty nicely done, was the fact is that she had a change of heart. The whole reason why she apologized to everyone she had ever scammed and kind of let them all off the hook was because she had found love. Because even something Eddie kind of talked about, it's we never actually found it out, but because even Sam was which one of them was the real her? All these different people she had pretended to be, which one was the real her? And Eddie was like, maybe she was looking herself. Maybe something happened so bad in her past that she was always kind of trying to find her identity again. So, that's probably why she ran the first time in the first place, I assume Tina was her real identity. I'm assuming that, but who's to say even back then that she wasn't pretending to be someone? Well, to be fair, it came up as Tina back then, so I kind of felt it must mean that's who she really was. So probably whatever it was, she was probably trying to escape from it even back then. Maybe she was doing something similar back then and she needed to get away. Whatever the case may be, this is probably all the stuff that she's done over the past 8 years, scamming people and stuff like that. So, that's sad. You never really get to know her true story like that. It's even something Sam said that I thought was kind of interesting, because it's it's so final when they're closing up the case and everything, because it's this person's gone, and it's just kind of all that was them and all that is them. It's our concern for them is kind of gone now because the case is over. It's just kind of sad packaging it all up and just putting it away. It just seems so, final, But that's why it's kind of oh yeah, just when you'll get too attached. But nevertheless, pulling it back to what I was trying to bring up before was the fact is that Sam was meeting Brad is actually what changed it, what made her change her mind. She could have ran away at any point in time, but she wanted to run away with Brad because she wanted them to be together. It's in her opinion, it's that's proof of the fact is that she loved you. So I thought it was kind of sweet. Bittersweet well, a sad situation that has kind of a bittersweet ending to it. At least there's some solace in that. Kind of sucks about, I mean, he's still kind of going through the crappy divorce and everything like that. I'm curious to see how, like, it's something that would never be answered, but I'm curious how things between him and his ex-wife would go, because I love the whole thing about Eddie kind of being like, oh yeah, like telling cops, yeah, don't tell the ex-wife about the situation yet. It's like, oh, you want to get paid first. It's like, nah, of course not. And he tries to even tell Sam, it's like, yo, shut up until we get this done. We get paid first, then you can tell her all you want to, because like she finds out that her ex-husband's affair, like, I mean, he's getting arrested for killing his lover, then it's kind of already out there, so she doesn't really need the money, she doesn't need the photos anyway, so she doesn't need to pay them. Was about to get the check because she's writing it, but Sam started asking too many questions, and then like she rips up the check because she's like, oh, you're trying to accuse me of murder, you're supposed to be on my side. So turns into that whole situation. But I'm curious, like, would she still kind of be like very, like I said, something that would never get answered, but how would she handle this divorce situation going forward, considering he just lost a woman he loved, and the fact that she's off having her own affair too? So should it be vicious, or are they going to be civil about it? Like I said, it's just kind of one of those things kind of floating off in the back of my mind. So a lot of interesting things came up about this case as we were diving deeper into it. Obviously, the whole situation in Tina's place, where Sam and Eddie got locked in the closet. I love that whole situation of just like, just kind of struggling as like, you don't want your cop girlfriend to know that you're stuck in a closet with me. And he's like, what? She's not my girlfriend. It's like, is it because like, yeah, you don't want to be caught in this weird position, or just like here by her in that sense? Or is it because you don't want to be caught in a situation with me being in the closet with me? And he's like, you think you're so resistant? She's like, oh yeah, well, what about that? He's like, yeah, that's my gun. And she's like, ooh, I guess it's a little embarrassing because you're like, I'm like, yeah, I'm so sexy that you kind of got your situation going. It's like, no, that's my gun. I guess I'm not as, okay, let's move past this embarrassing moments. There's that. Plus, we got to meet kind of another private eye. His name is Max Douchman, which very befitting name because he's kind of a douchebag. Apparently, him and Eddie actually used to work together, but even Sam was like, why'd you ever work with a guy like that? Apparently, it seems, I guess it's a situation of like, he's very smooth talker. He's probably very silver tongued, like in a sense of like, the fact is that he probably, because Eddie describes it as like he says what we wanted to hear, so it's probably like, he said all the right things to make us think he's an okay dude. Like Eddie, yeah, he has a sense of being like, at the very least we could get paid about it. It's like, hey, you're doing a job, so you obviously want to get paid for. But it seems like Max is so much a douchebag about it because he found out about the murder, but he didn't really care because he kind of put Sam down like, you actually sound a lot more convincing on your TV shows and stuff like that. It's like, could you look and act less of a smug dick, So it's kind of no wonder him and Eddie kind of broke off. But I definitely think we're going to be crossing paths with Max a lot more in the future, probably competing over people. I'm curious to see like how Max really handles his things, because it seems like he has a much more successful like thing, business and practice, because like he works out of a huge building, which not the case for Eddie, Berto, and Sam. So they work in their little office. So that came about. But we also met Zeus, who is Eddie's former partner when he was working, for the police and stuff like that. So that's probably going to be something we might see pop up. I don't know if Zeus will be someone they come to, especially because Zeus kind of seems like he might be a techie. Well, Berto kind of falls under the category of the techie dude, but it also seems like Zeus could fall on that. Maybe it might be like, we really, really need help. It's like Zeus can help us. He works in like security firms and stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be a character we see often or even more than the one time. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, especially considering he knew Eddie back in the day, kind of makes me feel like, there might be more to that. But he ended up helping them break into Max's building, in particular his office. And it's like, like the moment he heard it, it's like, you're talking about, what if I told you who it was? It's like, who is it? It's like, Max Douchman? He's like, it's gonna be fun. Like he had hesitations at first, but he found out it was Max. He's like, Dad, I'll help you. This is gonna be fun. Just even showing that shows you how much of a dick he is. That even Zeus is like, hell yeah, I'll help you take that bastard down. Not unless he knows about like their history. Like maybe he was around Eddie when Eddie's had him and Max had her falling out or whatever. Or maybe it's just because everyone knows about Max being a dick. Anyone in that circle knows about him being one. So it's very interesting, I guess, because it makes sense. Her being an actress and everything, we'll probably see her doing that a lot more, probably every episode or so, kind of going in disguise, like her acting a little drunk or whatever to get inside the building. Poor Peter, the security guard and everything, like she's trying to be like like distracting him and everything. And I love it that when it comes down to it and he sees Eddie coming out the elevator, so she sprays him with hairspray now. She's like, I'm so sorry, Peter, I had to do it. And they leave. It's like, poor bastard, just doing his job, and he got sprayed in the eyes for it. I'm surprised that doesn't come back to bite him in the ass, but I guess it's A-okay, because I guess in his mind, because it's like, well, potentially they didn't do anything, at least that he's aware of, so there's that. Probably never got a good enough look at their faces for it to really be a thing. That would honestly screw Sam over, considering her circumstances, which come up this episode, but I'll get to that in a second. But the fact of the matter is, like, if that ever came out, would probably severely screw over her, like, probation and stuff like that. So, which, speaking of probation, that turns out to be a bigger thing in this episode, because she ended up missing her probation off the meeting because she was working the case and everything, and the judge wasn't willing to kind of give her a second chance, because it's like, oh, like, the fact of the matter is, you've been, because it seems like it isn't like that, like, this whole recent circumstances that got her locked up, you know, kind of like going to rehab wasn't the first time, because it's talked about. The fact is that she was like, oh yeah, you like later on you showed up cleaned at first, but then like later on it's like, oh, you were super drunk because of some after party you went to or something like that. So she's probably been in and out of the courthouse a lot, and like this was supposed to be the judge being like, okay, maybe like, it seemed like it came from a caring place, because it's like, oh, the only way I'll help you be able to piece your life back together is if you actually go to jail. But surprisingly enough, Eddie stood up and looked out for her, because apparently there was also like photos taken of her coming out of a bar, but that was all like, you know, paparazzi, which is something Eddie touches on. It's like she's under such scrutiny that everyone's just waiting for her to screw up, whether or not she actually does or not. They're just going to paint it to look like she did, because we know that she was in that bar with Eddie trying to get help from Zeus. That's what that was all about, you know. So it's like we were working on a case and everything, and even the judge knows Eddie from his cop days. So it's like, he's like, look at me, have I ever really vouched for someone and it ever been a bad thing? And she's like, well, the fact is Eddie's vouching for you says a lot. So whereas before their partnership was kind of like, yeah, she'll leave when she's bored and done with this. It's like, nope, their partnership is more set in stone now, because it's like, oh yeah, she's with you for the very least 6 months. It's kind of her probation period. It's like either she works with you under your employment or she goes to jail. And I'm surprised Sam didn't say anything about it, but if you look at it, like, you can see Eddie actually contemplating it. It's kind of a moment of like, what do I do? And he's looking at Sam and everything, and it's just like, fine, you can work for me, you know. So that's kind of a nice touch. That is kind of interesting, because I was curious to see what was going to happen about her whole situation. Like was she still going to be working there? Like, obviously, like, because it's interesting, because Eddie had brought it up at the beginning of the episode. Like, it's like, you don't have to come in for the interviews, because if people think you're on a case, like they're thinking they're getting us, it's fine and dandy. I can just do the case work. Not every case is going to be explosive. All of the cases can just be a lot of this, just kind of sitting down. You know, smaller cases, you know, obviously this being like an affair case or whatever initially. So I thought that's kind of pretty neat. Like, obviously he had his reservations about it, but you can tell by the end, like, the way he sees, the way Sam acts and Carlina talking to her and everything, it makes him go like, yeah, that he ended up having to be forced to admit that Sam was right, because of her instincts and everything like that. Like, if she wasn't there, this case would have played out a lot differently. So he realizes that she has become a good part of this new situation of his, which wasn't too keen at first, but you can tell it's starting to kind of slowly, you know, he's starting to warm up to the idea of everything. So I thought that's pretty neat. Like I said, I was just curious to see whether that acting thing comes back or not, like the whole movie thing. I mean, she hasn't completely given up being an actor because she doesn't want to, but she wants to also do this too because, you know, it helps and everything. Eventually, it might get to the point where she kind of has to balance the two, in a sense of like, oh yeah, she might have to choose working with Eddie or actual job. It might be that complication. I don't know. We'll see. Another interesting thing about this episode, a character I would assume we will be seeing more often, is Monica, her new assistant, who apparently is a grinder, who apparently has like magnets and stuff inside of her like hands and stuff, which causes the lights around her to get a little messy. It's kind of interesting because she kind of seems a little bit like an oddball. But Berta was super into it. She's like, hey, oh, she's like, what's up? He's like, oh, you like me? He's like, what? No. But then he kind of leans over to Eddie. He's like, yeah, I think I kind of like her. It's that's definitely going to be interesting seeing her go back. Because she's super okay with a lot of stuff. She's like, okay, so like you told me to come to this place, unlock you out of this closet. Cool. Is that stuff I'm going to be expected to do a lot? Which is like, I'm fine either way. I just want to know ahead of time when it comes to like what I should kind of expect from this job. So that's kind of interesting. The newbie on the job now has an assistant. Obviously, she's going to be balancing a lot of her life. Like I said, that might play a role in the whole, like, oh, her doing acting stuff, while also, obviously, probation stuff, and now also, like, case stuff, too. So, it's definitely going to be interesting. Especially a little nice touch at the end where Eddie gives Sam her own office, kind of making her officially part of the team now and everything. So, that's pretty nice. So, I mean, overall, a very good episode. I like the fact is that I like the story of this episode, and obviously just kind of like the development between the characters so far. So I'm very interested to see what goes down in the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good